Good evening and welcome. Tonight we will be continuing our read through of this book, History as It Happened, a map by map guide. And as you can see by the title of this video, we will be reading the section about South and Southeast Asia. So if you've never seen this series before, I have not read any of these maps. I've only read the titles, so I'm not quite sure what we're going to be discussing tonight, other than a vague idea of what part of the world and its history we're going to talk about. So this will be very off the cuff. This will be most likely one take, unless there's like a very loud noise I need to edit out or something. One of the cats do something. But yeah, this is like unscripted, basically. I don't know what I'm about to read, so I'll probably make mistakes. You'll get to see all of that. I'll say things I regret and all that stuff. It looks like we're starting with the Indus River's bounty. And I do have paintbrush here to brush all the maps for you. Let's see what this says first. Rivers are crucial to civilizations, and nowhere is this more obvious than in the Indus Valley Civilization, or the IVCs, all the hip kids are calling it these days. The people here relied on the Indus River for life-giving water, nutrient-rich silt, and economy-boosting trade. As a result, some of the earliest cities developed, with revolutionary features such as toilets, town planning, and wheeled vehicles. It says at its height, more than 5 million people lived in the Indus Valley. All right, let's read this little box and then look at the maps. It says cleanliness and order. At its height, it's possible that more than 40,000 people lived in Mohenjo-Daro, which is in modern-day Pakistan, the greatest achievement of the IVC. It's clear from the city's grid layout, clean and dirty water systems, and sturdy clay brick homes that the city was expertly planned and well run. Yeah, it's a civilization we don't know too much about because we can't decipher their writing. That's what it talks about here. But we can see from what's left behind that they were pretty good at city planning, like way ahead of like what the Roman Empire would eventually do, and Babylon and all of the ancient pre-medieval civilizations. But anyway, let's see what this says. Early cultures. The earliest people to live in the Indus Valley moved there from the east, mostly settling along the banks of the Indus River. From around 3300 BCE, people began living in settlements, which grow into the first towns and cities in the area. Early on, distinctive cultures develop, whose main differences are to do with the kind of pottery they make. I assume this is the pottery right here. It says this terracotta pot was found in a burial site. The decoration on it has been painted by hand. Well, I'd assume so. What else would it be painted by back then? Anyway, here is Old Mohenjo-Daro, named after their pottery. So we have the Sati Siswal culture. Sati and Siswal. Looks like it's named after the cities there. This is the Kodiji culture. It says the fertile land around the river leads to bumper harvests of barley, rice, and wheat. Over here is the Dam-Sadat culture. There's Dam-Sadat. And the Amri-Nal culture. There's Amri right there. Looks like they were more of a coastal people, probably more of a delta people. Interesting. Yeah, I always think of the Indus Valley as just like one thing. I guess that's what the next map is going to be. I didn't know that it was so broken up into different cultures and then united. I wonder what made them different. I guess their pottery. Let's see what map number 2 says. A golden age. As time passes, the different cultures merge together and the IVC is born. So that's what I thought. More than 2,000 towns and cities have emerged, including great cities such as Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, filled with people fed from the surplus of crops made possible by the fertile soil of the region. The craftspeople of the IVC are as skilled as its city builders, producing beautiful jewelry, intricate sculptures, and an array of metal tools and weapons. So here it is, circa 2600 to 1900 BCE. The IVC. Never heard it called that, but it makes sense. There's big old Mohenjo-daro. So sitting high above Mohenjo-daro is a giant stone tower that some believe may have been Buddhist in origin. Interesting. And then up here's Harappa. It says Harappa is the second most important city in the IVC with 35,000 people. We've got Sotkako, we've got Dolavira, Lothal, Nalshara, Gonwarawala, Raymondari, Manda, and Rakigari. All kinds of towns I've never heard of. A huge area, too. Let's see what these say. Trade really took off in the Indus Valley from around 2500 BCE, though nobody has yet deciphered the writing on these slabs. Historians believe they were used to identify the trader or the goods they sold. This one has an elephant. This one has a big rhino. Very neat. Then we have the end of an era. People began leaving the cities after about 1900 BCE, which leads to regional cultures emerging again. Nobody really knows why the people leave, but it's possible that the Indus River simply changed course, perhaps due to climate change. The river is why the IVC began, so if it took a different route, the lives of the people in the area would be greatly affected. So here we have the Cemetery H culture. It says Cemetery H culture has unique customs, including placing cremated remains in special burial urns. Here's the Jukar culture. So there's Jukar right there. And the Rangpur culture. It's Rangpur. It says trade connections between people near the coast continue, but trade farther inland decreases greatly. Yeah, maybe it had something to do with the river. That makes sense. Here's the Priest King. It says this soapstone figure was carved toward the end of the IVC. It may have been painted with dyes and adorned with other materials. It is not clear who it represents. Yeah, he's called that because he looks quite important, but we don't know if he's a priest. We don't know if he's a king. We don't even know if they had a religion, or if they did, what that religion entailed, or if they had a monarchy, a ruling class or anything. We just don't know. Maybe someday we'll know, but not as of yet. We're on to the empires of early India. Here we go. From the last centuries BCE, India went from a land made up of regional kingdoms to a single nation governed by large empires. These dynasties ruled through organized government and using the teachings of the Buddha. Yet when the empires declined in the first millennium CE, power returned to local rulers. Here's a quote from Ashoka over here. Not killing living beings is good. It's pretty standard. But if you don't know why he's saying something so obvious, then just pay attention. It's an interesting story, starting with the Maurya Empire. The Maurya Empire is the largest of India's ancient kingdoms. It is founded in 321 BCE by Chandragupta Maurya, who conquers northern India after defeating Alexander the Great's remaining forces. He and successive emperors work to unite the country and expand the empire south until the last Maurya ruler, Brihadrata, is killed in 185 BCE. So here is the entire Maurya Empire, pretty big. Didn't make it all the way down to the tip of India or reach Sri Lanka. I don't think we'll reach Sri Lanka down there. But a majority of the Indian subcontinent here, you can see like Bangladesh is over there. There's the mouths of the Ganges. Let's see what all these little things say. It says, as well as that's about Ashoka. I think we read this first. The third Maurya emperor, Ashoka the Great, erects a series of pillars across India. They are inscribed with edicts, his views on life based on Buddhism. Are they going to talk about why? I guess not. But anyway, he used to be a very, brutal warlord, just slaughtering his enemies left and right until after one battle and realized what he'd done and how horrible it was. And he converted to Buddhism, and then he spent his life spreading Buddhism, spreading peace and not killing living beings. And on these big pillars, he would write, the rules you should follow. And there's a bunch that are still around, including, I guess these are all pillars right here. So right here says, as well as the great stupa at Sanchi, Ashoka built several other pillars across northern India. And there's the great stupa at Sanchi. It says Pataliputra is the capital of the Maurya Empire. And the Maurya Empire expands south, but stops when Ashoka becomes appalled by the violence of war. Here at Kanchipuram looks like. Is there a key that says these are all the pillars? It looks like this one has a key, but I guess you're supposed to assume that. I guess we can read this great stupa right here. It says also known as stupa number 1. The Great Stupa in the present-day Indian state of Madhya Pradesh was built in the 3rd century BCE under the orders of Ashoka, the grandson of Chandragupta. It is one of India's most sacred Buddhist monuments and said to house some of the Buddha's ashes. Here's the key, Ashoka pillar. Sorry to all of you who were like, it's right over there. But yeah, anyway. A big, gorgeous building. And this pretty gateway with all these little creatures and beings on the top, decorating it all throughout. And little elephants there supporting it. On the big stupa number 1. Let's move on to the Gupta Empire. In 319 CE, Chandragupta I becomes emperor of the Gupta dynasty. A century later, the empire spans from northwest to southeast India. There wasn't a period there. To northwest and southeast India, and is rich from trade with countries in the east. The Gupta Empire is a period rich in art, literature, and architecture, but declines in the mid-6th century. Does this one have a key? I guess we don't really need one. Let's see. All of this here, still up north, still following the Himalayas. Kind of hard to conquer those. We got down here, but they've lost territory over here. Much smaller. Well, it says this one was the biggest, so that makes sense. But see, we've got over here, we've got Mahabodhi is believed to be where the Buddha found enlightenment. During the Gupta era, the temple was expanded to include a 160-foot or 50-meter high temple building. You can see Varanasi right here. And Pataliputra that they mentioned before. This is the Dashavatar temple. So there's no boxes about it. Okay. Here's Kanchipuram. It says, during his reign as emperor from about 330 to 380 CE, Samudragupta claims territory as far south as Kanchipuram. Yeah, this is 319 to 550 CE. And here's a gold coin featuring Chandragupta II on horseback. Let's move on to some smaller kingdoms. Number 3. In the mid to late centuries of the first millennium CE, no single empire rules over the country. Instead, authority is in the hands of a few families and dynasties who govern regional kingdoms. For hundreds of years, they fight for control of territory, including the sacred Ganges Plains. So the blue here is the Chalukyas. They've got this area here, looks like centered around Badami there. The red is the Cholas, and they've got the southern tip of what's now India and Sri Lanka. Looks like Tanjavur is their territory. The green up here is the Pushyabhutis. All this. It looks like they've got a lot of the Ganges. But so does the Palas in gold here. They really overlap. I wonder if they're in different times, and that's why these overlap. Let's see what they say. It says the Pushyabhutis control northern India from the 6th to 7th centuries. The dynasty collapses when there is no heir to take over from the last ruler, Harsha Vardhana. Then it says from the 8th to 12th century, so they do overlap. The Pala dynasty governs a large area of North and East India, including Bengal and Bihar. The Palas are crucial for the popularity of Buddhism in Tibet. The Chalukyas govern central and western India between the 6th and 8th and 10th and 12th centuries. They build many Hindu temples. So Buddhist up here, Hindu down here. Here's the Cholas. The powerful Chola dynasty rules over most of southern India and Sri Lanka from the 9th to 13th centuries. They often clash with the Chalukyas. And this is a 12th century Chalukyan sculpture of the Hindu goddess Mohini. It's very beautiful. I wonder how big it is. Because it's very, very detailed. If it's tiny, I'd be very impressed. Because there's a lot of detail in that. There is a key for this map. Why did they put all the keys on random places? Goodness. I just have to assume each map has a key. I just gotta, where's Waldo it, I guess. We're on to temples and trade. Since around the 1st millennium CE, Southeast Asia has been a region where different ethnicities, religions, influences, and people have met. A number of diverse empires, kingdoms, and sultanates have risen and fallen here. And from the 16th century, the arrival of Europeans seeking spices and luxury goods added new layers of complexity. See this first map right here? It says early powers. The major kingdoms and empires at this time often have a strong core area based around a capital city, but the control of the realm weakens further out. By far the strongest state is the Khmer, with its impressive capital at Angkor. Many of these realms have a variety of tribal populations, and the influence of Hinduism and Buddhism from India is strong. So here's all of the kingdoms at this time. This is from 650 to 1250. We have Bagan up here in purple. Why is there dark purple and light purple? I guess that's their capital area, I suppose. It says the Bagan Empire thrives for 400 years till it falls to the Mongols in the late 1200s. We have the Dai Viet over here. It says Dai Viet becomes an empire after it frees itself from China in the 930s. It clashes with the Khmer Empire and later the Champa Kingdom. There's Champa down here. There's no little box about them. The Khmer's, all of this gold here, and you can see Angkor right there. And it says the Khmer Empire is the region's key power. Angkor Wat Temple Complex is its crowning glory. Then we have Srivijaya, which is all this green here, centered around Palembang here. It says the Srivijaya Empire's wealth comes from managing trade through straits in North and South Sumatra. This is Sumatra right here. trade here along the Malayan Peninsula and Sumatra, and a bit of Java. But Java is mostly ran by the Qadiris. You can see Borobudur right there. The Qadiri kingdom of 1042 to 1222 grows rich from trade and spices being shipped west to Europe. And many kingdoms and powers at this time. But it looks like they're all about to change here. All change. The outlines of modern-day states such as Vietnam, Thailand, and Cambodia begin to emerge on the mainland, while Islam starts to spread to the islands of the south. Indian culture becomes less dominant as the north of the region becomes more influenced by China. All right, we've got the gold here is Pegu, right here. The glowing purple is the Ava. It says the Ava and Pegu kingdoms rise from the ashes of the Pagan Empire. And there's Pegu down there, but oh, Pegu. Pegu is right here. That makes more sense. That's the Khmer still. Pegu is this one. Ava is this one. There we go. That makes a lot more sense. Sukhothai is in green outline. Sukhothai, is down here. But I'm confused. Oh, Sukhothai is right here. The Sukhothai kingdom breaks from the Khmer Empire in 1238 and lasts for 200 years. It enjoys a 20-year golden age under its king, Ramkhamhaeng, from 1279. All down the peninsula there too. There's Sukhothai. Alright, Ayutthaya is in purple. So it's this light purple here. There's Ayutthaya. The Khmer's right there. Still going strong for now. Dai Viet is all along here. And the Champa are up here. Then Malacca is right here. Sorry, my ankle just cracked. It says the Malacca Sultanate grows wealthy, controlling the spice trade through the Straits of Malacca. And then Majapahit is all down here and up along here on Borneo, on Sulawesi, and some of the other islands. And it says the fall of the Hindu Majapahit Empire in the mid-16th century helps the spread of Islam. Interesting, all breaking apart there. Then we have European influence. European powers arrive looking for spices and land to grow profitable crops, such as tea, coffee, and rubber. They establish bases across the region, but except for the Spanish in the Philippines, they are less interested in colonization. They bring with them goods from around the globe, including the chili pepper from the Americas and coffee from Africa, which transform the cuisine of Southeast Asia. So the hot pink is the Dutch. All here along Java, see Batavia right there. They got Timor, which I thought was Portuguese. Oh, you can see the Portuguese part right there. They got part of Timor, important in history. They've got bits of Sulawesi and the Moluccas, right? I almost said Moluccas. Moluccas over there. Moluccas, right? It says the Spice Islands, rich in nutmeg, clove, mace, and pepper, are taken and ruled by Portugal from 1522 to 1605. After a period of Spanish rule until 1663, the Dutch conquer the islands. The Dutch trade area is in light pink here around Borneo and Sumatra. There's Padang right there. It says the Dutch used the port city of Padang to trade across Sumatra and to ship rubber, tea, and tobacco to Europe. Portuguese control, so they've got Timor and Macau. It says Portugal rents the port of Macau from China in 1557. It trades tea and other items from the port. Spanish control is in purple. They've got the Philippines here. Spain conquers the Philippines in 1565. The port of Manila, in particular, becomes a center for trade in Chinese silk. There's Manila. Spanish trade areas in light purple appear by Brunei. On the tip of Borneo there. Do they have any others? I don't think so. And then British control is in brown. Do you see any brown? Oh, Penang. Just this bit. They'll have more soon, but just for now, they've got Penang. In 1786, Britain sets up its first trading post in the region of Penang. This is the first step toward the British takeover of Malaya. Did I read all the boxes? I believe so. What's this? It says, a view of the Dutch East Indies' capital Batavia, which is modern-day Jakarta, in Java. In 1723, the Dutch remained in control of the city until 1942. Big bustling Batavia. Looks like it's a little river road right here. They're coming down on a little rowboat there. Then down here we have some beautiful rock carvings. This carved stone frieze shows the army of the Khmer ruler Jayavarman VII, who reigned from 1181 to 1218. It is from the Bayan, a major Buddhist temple in Angkor, the Khmer capital. And down here is beautiful Bagan. Someone requested the other day, like, when is Bagan? And it's like, oh, Bagan's part of Mandalay in Myanmar, so it's going to be a while. And I was like, darn, I wish I could do a video about Bagan. It's so pretty. Not yet, though. Bagan, in central Myanmar, formerly Burma, was the capital of the Bagan Empire. Between the 9th and 13th centuries, more than 10,000 Buddhist temples were built in the city and its surrounding valley. At its height, Bagan was an important center of Buddhist religion and scholarship. Yeah, there's temples all throughout, dotting the landscape. And today you can take hot air balloon tours, like at sunrise, and see all the little temples. Wake up with the morning sun. It must be so gorgeous. The more I look, the more I find all over here. There's the little ones back there. They're probably not little, they're probably huge, but they look tiny because they're so far away. Some over there. There's a bunch over here. All over the place. Amazing. Say 10,000? Oh my goodness. Then the Mughals rise to power, I should say. I guess Babur arrived, but still. When a Muslim warrior prince named Babur marched east from his native Central Asia and conquered northern India in 1526, he established an empire that grew to be one of the greatest in history. At its peak, the Mughal Empire covered most of modern-day India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. The empire started to crumble in the 18th century, but it left a rich legacy of art and architecture. Yeah, I love Indian history. I really like a history that has very defined eras that are very distinct, so they're easy to remember and easy to identify. If you look at a building, you'll know exactly who built that and when. And the Mughals are great examples of that, because the Taj Mahal is Mughal, the Red Fort, all that. Over here's the Battle of Panipat. It says the Mughal court produced beautiful illustrated books such as the Akbarnama, or Book of Akbar, which records the dynasty's rise. This scene shows Babur's cavalry charging the Sultan of Delhi's men at Panipat. After trapping them, they used cannon fire, something new to warfare in India, to score a decisive victory. It looks like the horses are very confused and frantic in this. And this guy's falling off his horse. It's very chaotic by the looks of it. I'm sure hearing a cannon for the first time would definitely do that. So let's start with Babur. Number 1, Babur. Descended from the great Mongol ruler Genghis Khan, Babur rises through the ranks to become a brilliant soldier. In 1526, he defeats the Sultan of Delhi and establishes the Mughal Empire, which rules over much of northern India. So we have battles are obviously a little battle symbol there. There at Panipat, it says Babur's well-trained forces defeat the much larger army of the unpopular Delhi Sultanate. So the Mughal Empire is dark peach, I guess, and then the territory conquered is in this light peachy color. There's Kabul. Babur catches Kabul in 1504 and uses the city as a base from which to attack Delhi. And then Babur establishes Agra as the first Mughal capital. So all this stretch of northern India up here. Then we move on to Akbar. Akbar the Great, and this is him up here. Akbar, the grandson of Babur, is regarded as the greatest Mughal emperor. Much of Babur's kingdom is lost under his son Humayun, but the next emperor, Akbar, wins it back and extends the empire. He is tolerant of other faiths and promotes Hindu princes to high ranks in his court to keep the peace. So yeah, territory here, and territory gained is in peach. So he gains a whole bunch of northern India. Looks like he's following the Ganges too. What do we have here? It says in 1540, Humayun is forced into exile in Persia. He retakes Delhi and Agra before his death in 1556. In 1571, Akbar moves the Mughal capital from Agra to the newly built city of Fatehpur Sikri, right next door. And then through conquest and clever negotiation with local rulers, Akbar expands the Mughal Empire south and east. Then we move on to the empire peaking here. During the peaceful reign of the next two emperors, Jahangir and Shah Jahan, Mughal India experiences a golden age of art and architecture. Shah Jahan's successor, Aurangzeb, expands the empire to its greatest extent, but his merciless rule and religious intolerance lead to revolts. In the 1650s, the Marathas, a Hindu warrior people, rise to power in southern India and rival the Mughals. So now all of the peach, like we said. And then they gain all of this here. But then it says Mughal Empire territory lost. Oh, I see. That's from this map. Okay. See, if I read this all before, this would all make sense. So these areas they lose, and I guess they regain them. They lose when Humayun comes back, apparently. So now we are here in the era of Shah Jahan and Aurangzeb. Shah Jahan moves the Mughal capital from Agra to Delhi and orders the construction of the massive Red Fort. Then it says after seizing the throne in 1658, Aurangzeb ruthlessly wages war to expand the empire south. And here's the Marathas. Down here, it says the Maratha Empire conquers land south of the Mughals and threatens Aurangzeb's rule. Yeah, it's all downhill from there. Here's a Taj Mahal down here that Shah Jahan built as a tomb for his wife Mumtaz Mahal. Probably like the most beautiful building in the world, let's be real. Objectively, not subjectively. Just an amazing place. Let's talk about the end of the Mughals. After Aurangzeb's death, local princes fight to control the empire. Weak Mughal rulers fail to stop Maratha invasions, and the British Empire slowly gains land in India. In 1858, the British bring more than 300 years of Mughal rule to a close when they depose the last Mughal emperor. We've got the Battle of Plassey over here, but I'm jumping ahead. I think I should read this one first. It says from 1720 to the 1760s, the Marathas capture much of the Mughals' territory. You can see here. But they are conquered by the British in 1818. Then we have the purple here. It says that's the British Empire territory. So yeah, they had just this, the Marathas, and then they conquered all this. But but the British are over here and over here. And it says in 1757, the army of the British East India Company defeats the Nawab of Bengal. The British go on to seize control of India, province by province. And the Mughals are just up here. It says by the early 1800s, blah, 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 the early 1800s, the Mughals control only a small area around Delhi. This looks like the British are here. Their fancy red coats, their big horses, and here's the, I guess, the Marathas, or the Nawab of Bengal. It's the Nawab of Bengal with their big elephants here. And it says Robert Clive, leader of the British East India Company, bribed Mir Jafar, general of the Nawab of Bengal. This act allowed the British to take charge of Bengal. So that's not the Nawab, that's the general. But it's the Bengali, basically, is what I'm trying to say. Again, if I had read this all in advance, I would have known what I'm talking about. Krakatoa. So in history, this big old volcano has been known as Krakatoa in the English-speaking world, but in Indonesia, it's pronounced Krakatau. So I've read a lot of like little things about Krakatoa that have renamed it Krakatau. And like, sure, if that's what we can call it, we can call it Krakatau. I have no problem with that. It's more fun to say Krakatoa. But if you want to call it Krakatau, I'm all about calling people by the names they prefer. That is how I live my life. Happy Pride, everyone. In 1883, do you like my Pride nails, by the way? I love them. I'd show you my toenails too. They're cute, but I'm not showing my feet ever on the channel. I'm gonna shut up now. In 1883, an Indonesian volcanic island displayed the sheer force of nature when it erupted with the force of several nuclear bombs. The blast on Krakatau, also known as Krakatoa, obliterated 2/3 of the island and was so loud that it was heard 2,800 miles away, or 4,600 kilometers away in Mauritius, just like on the other end of the Indian Ocean. It sent so much gas and volcanic dust into the atmosphere that it caused the planet to cool and changed the appearance of the sun. So let's look at Krakatau up here, volcanic island. Before the eruption, Krakatau is a 5.6 mile or 9 kilometer long uninhabited island created over time by underwater volcanic flows hardening to become rock. 3 volcanic mountain cones form on the island, with the highest, known as Rakata, sitting 2,667 feet, or 813 meters above sea level. It was pretty big. Well, Rakata is pretty big. I guess Krakatau's the... Wait, Krakatau is the island and the volcano is Rakata? I guess the highest is Rakata. Okay. Right? Okay, I'm a little confused. Over here is Sebesi by the looks of it, and it says, like Krakatau, the island of Sebesi is volcanic, but no eruptions have ever been recorded. It's very quiet. It's Krakatau, and it says Rakata had not erupted for around 2,000 years. I guess that's about to change. And there's the islands of Panjang and Sertong next door. Explosion! So it's... Rakata is the volcano. I didn't know this. This is wild. I thought the volcano was Krakatau, but the island is Krakatau. They're both going to explode, so it's all good. Rakata begins to belch out columns of smoke and ash in May 1883, but nobody is prepared for the events that start on August 26th. Rakata begins erupting, shaking the volcano and sending black smoke and debris into the sky. Early the next morning, pressure built up inside the volcano is released in a catastrophic explosion. Almost instantly, 2/3 of the island collapses and falls into the sea. This causes tsunamis that reach up to 120 feet, or 37 meters high, and kill more than 36,000 people living in towns and villages on the surrounding coastlines. So our key here says the gray is ash and rock buildup. So we can see here all of the ash built up around Sertung. And just in the ocean here, it says temporary islands form from the ash and rock spewed out by the volcano. All throughout. Stone and ash from Krakatoa increase Sertung Island's size. And most of the island collapses, as you can see here. Looks like a little bit survived. Replaced by a gaping underwater hollow. So yeah, this was the mountain. And kaboom. Gosh, it's like we can't even fathom the size and sound of that. I mean, we've had volcanoes. There's been like Pinatubo and such, but I don't think anything is... I guess Mount St. Helens too, but still. I don't know. Let me know, volcano experts watching this. Was Mount St. Helens explosion bigger? Surely not. It's Krakatoa. Like, it's an iconic explosion. I don't know. But let's talk about Anak Krakatoa. Following the eruption, a new volcano begins to rise slowly inside the underwater crater left on Krakatoa. Anak Krakatoa, or Child of Krakatoa, first appears above sea level in 1927 and grows after each one of its frequent eruptions at a rate of 5 inches, or 12.7 centimeters a year. It's a little guy at first. Growing. In 2018, Anak Krakatoa's site collapses, causing tsunamis that kill 437 people. Holy moly. I didn't know that. That's so devastating. Only time will tell if it can reach the levels of destruction that Krakatoa caused in 1883. Like, this volcano is still taking people out. People are still dying in Krakatoa in 2018. Goodness. Let's see what's happening now. It says a lot of Sertung Island's been eroded away by the sea. Yeah, look how tiny it was back then compared to now. There's Anak Krakatoa. It says Anak Krakatoa has formed in the area that was obliterated by the 1883 explosion. And here's what's left of the regular Krakatoa. It looks like Penjong is a lot smaller now, I guess, as Anak Krakatoa grows. I don't know. I guess the shorelines are changing as this island grows and evidently shrinks, causing tsunamis, killing 437 people. That's awful. My goodness. Changing the world. The eruption sent ash, rock, and gases 50 miles or 80 kilometers into the air, which blotted out the sun for 3 days before eventually falling into the water and onto the surrounding islands. This material was responsible for affecting the light from the sun and moon for years afterward, causing the moon to appear blue or green, wow, and the sun a vivid red. It also lowered global temperatures by as much as 2.2 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 1.2 degrees Celsius, in the year following the eruption. It's wild how one big eruption can just like disrupt the entire planet. So wild. And look at this painting. There's no caption for this, but I wonder if this was a person who witnessed it firsthand, painting what it looked like. Gosh, I can't imagine. It's Bapu. We're shaking up the British Empire. We skipped ahead really far in history. We went from 1883 to the 1930s. Okay. On the morning of April 6, 1930, Indian activist Mahatma Gandhi raised a lump of salty mud on the Arabian Sea coast and said, "With this, I am shaking the foundations of the British Empire." This moment came at the end of the Salt March, a 240-mile or 385-kilometer trek to challenge the British Empire and its tax on salt. Gandhi felt the tax was unfair and hit the poorest in Indian society. By producing his own salt, he broke the law. There's a quote by him saying, "I regard myself as a soldier, though a soldier of peace." There he is right here. Everyone walking with him to the sea. Looks like they're on the sand, heading to the shore. Look at the long train of people. Wow. Here's the map of the Salt March by the looks of it. Gandhi had emerged as a leader of India's independence movement. It had also developed the idea of satyagraha, or nonviolent resistance, by the time of the Salt March. After each day of the march, Gandhi speaks against the unfairness of Britain's control of salt, which stops ordinary Indians from making their own salt and forces them to pay high prices to get it. Gandhi's tactic of opposing British rule without violence confuses the British and unites Indians looking to end their rule. So here it starts at the Sabarmati ashram. The march begins at Gandhi's ashram, or religious retreat, on March 12, 1930. We're going to head through Matar, Anand, Anki, Samni, Ankleshwar, Delad, Surat, to Dandi. The march ends in Dandi on April 5th, 1930. Gosh, almost a month of walking. And picking up people all along the way, I'm sure. Disobeying Britain. The crowds following Gandhi grew from several dozen to hundreds by the end of the Salt March. Gandhi encouraged his followers to disobey British laws, leading to many, including Gandhi himself, being arrested as the disobedience campaign grew. The march and its aftermath brought India's independence struggle to the attention of the wider world, but India did not gain its freedom from Britain for another 17 years. Thankfully, he lived to see it before he was assassinated, but yeah, that's a long independence struggle. Well, like World War II happened between it still, but nevertheless, we love Gandhi on this channel. Then after independence comes the partition of India. After almost 2 centuries of British rule, British India gained independence in 1947. Yet the struggle for freedom was complicated by disagreements between Hindus and Muslims, who had competing ideas for the future. In response, the British hastily decided to divide the territory into 2 states, Hindu-majority India and Muslim-majority Pakistan. The results were devastating. So true. Let's see what these maps tell us about the partition here. Starting with independence, most of India is ruled by the British, either directly or via semi-independent Indian rulers. Many Indians resent British control, and an independence movement led by activist Mahatma Gandhi grows in strength. In 1945, weakened by World War II, Britain at last promises to leave India. So British India is in this Pepto-Bismol pink here. We've got this area all up here through the Punjab, across Delhi, all down the Ghats, all across central India here, and then up through what's now Bangladesh, Bengal, and into Burma. All the way down. They've got the Andamans too. The princely states are in this kind of rosy pink here. Over here and over here. And down here. And up here. Portuguese India is right here. They've got Goa. And that's about it, right? Oh, they have... Yeah, it says Portugal and France rule trading ports along the coast of the country. And that's Puducherry today, right? I believe so. Correct me if I'm wrong. And French India. I can barely see. And up, didn't they have one over here too? Maybe I'm just thinking of Goa. Alright, Muslim majority area is in highlighted green. So we have all of this over here. And all of this over here. Although, of course, there's Muslims all throughout. And then the Sikh majority area is in this gray right here. And of course, there's Hindus all throughout. It's not like they were segregated, but there are majority areas there. That's what they're saying. Let's see what all these little boxes say now. It says, though most of India's population is Hindu, Muslims and Sikhs make up the majority of large parts in the north and east. In 1919, oh, that's Amritsar. Gosh, in 1919, a massacre of peaceful Indian protesters by British soldiers in Amritsar inspires Gandhi to launch a non-violent campaign for independence. It was a horrible, horrible event. Here's Dhaka. In 1906, the All India Muslim League is set up to campaign for India's Muslims in Dhaka. Concerned that the INC is ignoring their interests, by the 1930s it calls for a separate Muslim state. And here's Calcutta. It was known then, now it's Kolkata. Muhammad Ali Jinnah, leader of the All India Muslim League, calls for direct action in support of a separate state for Muslims in 1946. It leads to riots in Calcutta where 5,000 die. Gosh. Yeah, Portugal and France were trading ports on the coast. Here's a princely state. It says the princely states are not directly ruled by the British, but rather indirectly through an Indian ruler. Up here is now Mumbai, then it was called Bombay. And it says the mainly Hindu-led Indian National Congress, or INC, is formed in 1885 in Bombay. It grows into India's most powerful independence movement. In 1942, Gandhi and the INC launched the Quit India movement in Bombay. It demands Britain's immediate withdrawal. The INC want India to remain united. And this is about the Salt March. It says Gandhi's 1930 Salt March draws more attention to the independence movement. Yeah, a lot happening. But it's about to get chaotic over here with the partition. As independence looms, violent clashes between Hindus and Muslims spread. In June 1947, the British decide to partition India. Boundaries are hurriedly set, and Pakistan and India gain independence a day apart in August. The quick transfer of power leads to horrific violence. So here you can see India, all in yellow. Then we have West Pakistan and East Pakistan. Let's see what we've got here. And Goa. Okay, wait, where's the key? Here we go. Movements of Muslims is blue. Makes sense. Movement of Hindu and Sikhs are yellow. We can see we've got Jammu and Kashmir appears. Icky, even today it's still icky. In October 1947, war breaks out between India and Pakistan over the disputed territory of Jammu and Kashmir. They go to war again in 1965. That was my foot sliding off the chair, sorry. I keep adjusting my seat as quietly as I can, and sometimes I don't succeed. Here's the border right here, and it says a British judge, Cyril Radcliffe, maps out the borders in just 5 weeks, and he's never visited India. Holy moly. Why do they hire Cyril Radcliffe to do it? I'm sure there were far more competent people. Anyway, we have the new state of Pakistan. It's made up of 2 provinces separated by India. Power lies in West Pakistan, leading to tensions. Most certainly. I'm sure they'll talk about it in this map over here. Indian forces annex Goa and the rest of Portuguese India in 1961. France hands over its Indian settlements between 1949 and 1954. Hyderabad is the largest of more than 500 princely states at independence. Almost all choose or are forced to join India or Pakistan by 1950. Here we can see Travancore, Junagadh there, and Bhopal, and princely states that resisted. I thought there were more. Yeah, there's Manipur, looks like, and Tripura. Sikkim, yeah. I think these ones, if I remember my history, like tried to fight back against it, like try to declare war, but did not work out for them. In 1948, Gandhi is assassinated in Delhi by a Hindu extremist who holds him responsible for partition. That was not his fault. He did not want partition. He wanted everyone to get along. The partition of Punjab sparks brutal violence. 10 million people flee for their lives, and up to 1 million are killed. Yeah, also, if I recall, isn't partition the largest movement of people in history? Just millions of people going back and forth, fighting each other as they meet and clash. Horrific. And here it says the partition of Bengal causes more than 4 million Hindus and Sikhs to flee East Pakistan into India in 1958. Is that all the boxes there? I think so. Yeah. And here's a map of today. Here's what it looks like today. Here's India. There's Bangladesh. East Pakistan becomes Bangladesh in 1971 after gaining independence from West Pakistan. And there's Kashmir. Kashmir is still disputed between India and Pakistan. Pakistan. Partition, I just saw the PA and went with it. Partition created a lasting rivalry between India and Pakistan. The two countries have gone to war 4 times, and the borders of Kashmir remain disputed. Yep. Here's a picture up here of people moving away from probably the life that their families had been living for hundreds, if not thousands of years, to be honest. India's history goes all the way back. And being forced to move. As many Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs found themselves on the wrong side of the border after partition. Millions left their homes for safety, many on foot, like these Sikhs fleeing violence in West Punjab. Up to 2 million people died in fighting during the Exodus. Very dark chapter in India's history there. But it's a new start for Southeast Asia. Let's see what's happening in the rest of this corner of the continent. The colonial rule established by European countries over most of Southeast Asia from the 1500s began to be challenged in the late 19th century. In just a few years in the second half of the 20th century, independence movements that had sprung up across the region took control as nations broke away from their colonial rulers. I guess we just go across. There's no 1, 2, 3. So let's start in Malaya. You can see Malaysia becomes this. But starting with Malaya, which is this area here, Malaya. Malaya had been a British colony since 1826. But Britain's attempts to grant some level of independence after World War II, known as the Malayan Union, fail. Malaya gains independence in 1957 and joins with Sarawak, Sabah, and Singapore to establish the Federation of Malaysia in 1963. But Singapore leaves the Federation in 1965 against their will. Here are Malayans protesting the Malayan Union. Union not wanted. Malaya for Malays. Malayan Union not wanted. But yeah, I think changing the name to Malaysia is pretty clever because you got the S for Singapore, Sarawak, Sabah, and then it becomes Asia. Malaysia. Sounds like a portmanteau. Very good naming scheme for Malaysia, even though they lost one of their S's. Forcefully lost their S. They kicked him out. Let's move on to French Indochina. From the 1800s, most of Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia are known as French Indochina. After France loses the First Indochina War in 1954, the 3 countries gain independence. Though a united, self-governing Vietnam is only established in 1976 at the end of the Second Indochina War, also called the Vietnam War. In the U.S., we call it the Vietnam War. Apparently in Vietnam, they call it the U.S. War, which makes sense. They're not going to call it the Vietnam War. But yeah, there is what was Indochine, French Indochina. Now 3 separate countries with 3 very turbulent histories, all due to colonization, including Burma over here. It says Burma secures independence from Britain in 1948 and renamed Myanmar in 1989. There's always a question of why do we say Myanmar parentheses Burma? And that's because the name was changed by a regime that most of the world didn't agree with. Even though it's one of those things like Krakatau, like nobody here called it Burma. The British called it Burma. everyone here called it Myanmar. So they changed the name to Myanmar officially, kind of like, I was about to say kind of like Sri Lanka, but it wasn't known as Sri Lanka before, I don't think. But yeah, that's why a lot of places call it Myanmar parentheses Burma, because a lot of countries around the world still don't recognize the name Myanmar. They still call it Burma. There's Thailand. Thailand was never colonized. Thailand's strong military and smart diplomacy enabled it to resist colonization by European nations. So it's still intact today. I mean, I guess this is a today map, but this is what it looked like even during all of this colonization nonsense. Here's the beautiful Philippines. Under Spanish control since the 16th century, the Philippines are governed by the United States from 1898, when it defeats Spain in the Spanish-American War. Like many countries in the region, the Philippines are occupied by Japan during World War II, but gain full independence and become a republic in July 1946. There's Philippines here in purple. It says in office from 1935 to 1944, Manuel Luis Quezon was the first elected president of all the Philippine Islands. There's Quezon. Over here is New Guinea. So the island is New Guinea. It's the line here. I'm sure I'll talk about it, but this side is Indonesia. This side is the independent country of Papua New Guinea. Although these are the Solomons over here, that's not part of Papua New Guinea. And that's Bougainville. That's about to be its own thing. But this section's called Irian Jaya. But when you say New Guinea, you mean the whole island. It's kind of like a United Kingdom, Great Britain kind of thing. New Guinea. The British colony of New Guinea is established in 1884, and in 1906, Britain puts it under Australia's leadership. It eventually secures its independence as Papua New Guinea, or the PNG, in 1975. PNG is a mineral-rich country, and gold, copper, and silver mining are key to its economy. Here's a copper mine in central Papua New Guinea. The island's natural resources make it attractive to colonial powers. It's one of the reasons why Bougainville is trying to be independent, because it has such a huge mining economy that they could support themselves. They don't need no Papua New Guinea. But that's a whole to-do. Hopefully this becomes the newest country. And speaking of new countries, over here is East Timor, or Timor-Leste. East Timor is under Portuguese rule until 1975, after which the country declares independence, but is invaded by Indonesia. A referendum in 1999 results in Indonesia leaving, and East Timor becoming a democratic republic. Don't forget its exclave over there, too. There's a little thing here. It says, formerly governed by the Netherlands, Irian Jaya becomes part of Indonesia in 1969. Let's talk about the rest of Indonesia. There's Sukarno right there. The Netherlands rules over Indonesia into the early 20th century, when a widespread nationalistic movement develops. After the end of World War II, during which Indonesia is occupied by the Japanese, the Dutch agreed to independence in 1949. Here's Sukarno. He led the opposition to Dutch rule and was Indonesia's first president from 1945 to 1996. Kind of a nebulous character in history. Here it says, the peoples of Asia raised their voices and the world listened. That's Sukarno. Is that the end? Oh no, there's more. We're going into the Vietnam War. Where does this end? Okay, this is the last page. The Vietnam Wars. Two brutal conflicts tore Vietnam apart after World War II. After a hard-won war for independence from France led to the country's division, a conflict broke out in South Vietnam between communist rebels and the pro-Western government. Fearing the spread of communism, the U.S. became heavily involved, and the war escalated into one of the longest of the 20th century. So the U.S. anti-war protest slogan, stop the bombing, stop the war. Moving on to French Indochina. We're going back in time to 1858. Between 1858 and 1883, the French take control of Vietnam from the ruling Nguyen dynasty. In 1887, they created the Indo-Chinese Union, made up of 3 Vietnamese territories, plus the kingdoms of Cambodia and Laos. The French maintained rule until World War II. So yes, we've got Tonkin up here, Annam, Cochin China, Cambodia, and Laos. It says Tonkin, or North Vietnam, and Annam, Central Vietnam, are under French rule by 1886. You can see Hanoi up there. There's Cochin China. France captures Saigon there in 1859. It becomes the capital of the French colony of Cochin China in 1862. Moving on to war with France. Japan occupies Vietnam during World War II. After its downfall in 1945, the communist-led Viet Minh movement declares Vietnam's independence. The French try to retake control, but a long war where Vietnam uses guerrilla tactics, which means using surprise and unusual attacks, ends with a French defeat in 1954. Vietnam is split into 2 as a temporary measure, which we learned in history never worked. You can look at Germany and Yemen. I guess Korea is the only holdout from that time when they're like, let's just make it north and south, or an east and west. It says much of the war is fought in the north. You can see all the battles here. After the defeat of the French, Vietnam's divided into 2 zones, Communist North Vietnam and US-supported anti-communist South Vietnam. There's the north, and here's the south. And here's Dien Bien Phu. In 1954, the Viet Minh end the First Indochina War by forcing the French army to surrender at Dien Bien Phu. Right there. War with the U.S. Moving on to the next war. It won't be the last. Rebels supported by North Vietnam start a campaign to reunite Vietnam under communist rule. Fearing the spread of communism, the U.S. dramatically increases its military support for South Vietnam in 1964. By 1967, there are about 500,000 U.S. troops in Vietnam. The U.S. launches a massive bombing campaign, followed by ground invasion, but the communist forces hold out. This is a busy map. Holy moly. Okay. I guess we just work our way down. There's a ship right here. It says in 1964, after the North Vietnamese Navy torpedoes 2 U.S. warships in the Gulf of Tonkin, the U.S. commits to sending in ground troops. Got big arrows moving down here. What do the big arrows mean? It's the Ho Chi Minh Trail. That makes sense. Down this way to Da Nang and Saigon. The U.S. bombers target the North Vietnamese supply routes, but later the north, but have little impact. You can see it looks like the green there's bombings. Operation Rolling Thunder is the green explosions. And there's the Sihanouk Trail. It says the communist forces in Cambodia transport supplies via the Sihanouk Trail. The North Vietnamese transport soldiers and weapons to the south via a secret network of tunnels. It runs through communist-held areas of Laos and Cambodia. And here it says communist forces in Cambodia. I read that already. Then I've read all of these. Okay, not as confusing as a map as I thought. It's just very busy. It was a very busy war. Then we head on to the Tet Offensive. In 1968, the communists launched the Tet Offensive, an all-out attack on South Vietnam. The assault is beaten back, but the massive number of casualties turns U.S. public opinion against the war. In 1969, the U.S. slowly begins to withdraw its troops. See, all of these purple explosions here are part of the Tet Offensive. My goodness. I really just imagined it being centered around Saigon and Hue. But it was all over South Vietnam. I didn't realize the extent of it. It says the conflict's bloodiest battle happens in Hue in early 1968 with thousands of fighters and civilians killed. And here in March 1968, U.S. soldiers massacre 500 unarmed villagers in My Lai. And that's it for that map. Because we're coming to an end of this war here. End of the war. After several years of talks, a peace agreement is finally reached in 1973. The U.S. withdraws its last forces in March. Despite the truce, the North Vietnamese launch a new attack in March 1975. They quickly overrun the South, bringing the war to an end. Vietnam's officially reunified on July 2nd, 1976, as a communist nation. It says in 1972, North Vietnam launches the Easter Offensive. The remaining U.S. forces helped drive them back. They really targeted the holidays, didn't they? First Tet, then Easter. Looks like the green explosions was the Easter, and yellow is the Spring Offensive. After the Spring Offensive of 1975, North Vietnamese troops captured the South Vietnamese capital in April. Here it says by 1975, communists are in control of much of Laos, as well as in Cambodia. But that won't last for long, since Vietnam will invade Cambodia and start that war, which will end Pol Pot's regime there in Cambodia, and so on and so forth. Let's see what we've got down here in these pictures. These are protesters demonstrating against the war in Washington, D.C., the U.S. Capitol. You can see the Capitol building right there. All these protesters climbing this monument. Protesting. The fall of Saigon. At the end of April 1975, 100,000 North Vietnamese troops encircled Saigon. On April 30th, the South Vietnamese government surrendered. The troops fled the city. The war was over. And some of these guys look very happy about it, I'm sure. They are rolling in. This guy's smoking. Oh, my cat's crying at the door. He wants in. Well, that's good timing because we just finished. Yet these guys are chatting like, we did it. We won. It's over. We can not have to live in tunnels anymore. But yeah, what a mess that was. But yeah, looks like next we're going to talk about North and East Asia. So look forward to that. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I love reading these books. It's so much fun. I want to just sit and read the whole thing. I went out and checked out a bunch of Lonely Planet history books to keep me from digging into this book. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this style of content, please consider subscribing, because like I said, we're moving on to other parts of Asia next. And don't forget to hit that thumbs up. Let me know all your thoughts down below. I hope you found this video to be relaxing and educational, and I hope that you have a good night.